Can everybody be seated so we can get started? I call the meeting to order. Francine?
Okay. I hereby announce pursuant to Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act that adequate notice of this meeting has been transmitted on January 14th, 2024 by the Board Administrative Officer to the Asbury Park Press, the Two River Times, the Township Clerk, and has been posted in the meeting room and in the entrance hall in Town Hall, all pursuant to Section 13 of the Open Public Meetings Act.
Thank you. Roll call.
Mr. Berkeley,
Present.
Ms. Campus,
Present.
Ms. Gerhart,
Present.
Mr. Luciani,
Here.
Mr. Marzocca, Mr. Giampolo,
Here.
Mr. Orfanidopoulos,
Here.
Ms. Costello, and Mr. Frigiola.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, is the minutes, I don't have the agenda in front of me.
It was in
Are the minutes first?
The Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh, yeah. Oh, jeez. Everybody, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment in silence for our departed military, first responders, police. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we start the public hearing, we are going to approve the minutes for March 19th. There's two sets of minutes, one for executive and one for the meeting. Did everybody get a chance to review it and give any comments that they had?
Yes.
Everybody's good?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll do both at one time?
That's correct.
Is everybody eligible to vote?
That's correct.
So go ahead, do roll call.
I just need a motion and second, please.
I move to pass the minutes for both executive and regular session of March 19th, 2025.
I'll second that motion.
Eligible to vote, Mr. Berkeley,
Yes.
Ms. Campus,
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart,
Yes.
Mr. Orfanidopoulos,
Yes.
Mr. Marzocca, Mr. Luciani,
Yes.
Ms. Costello, and Mr. Frigiola.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, approved. Item number 1.
Zoning Board of Adjustment, 2024-5, St. Mina, Coptic Orthodox Church, 134 State Highway 34, Block 17, Lot 12, R40B Zone, preliminary and final major site plan, bulk C variances, D1 use variance. Applicant seeks preliminary and final site plan approval to construct a recreational facility. The recreational facility is not a permitted use in the zone and requires a D1 use variance. The new facility will support the existing church by providing parishioners with a multi-purpose gymnasium, meeting spaces, and classrooms. The existing sports fields will be upgraded and enlarged.
Okay, before we get started, I would just like Marty, our attorney, to go over the ground rules on how the meeting will run, questions, comments, and all that kind of thing.
So this is our second hearing. I already spoke to Mr. Alfieri. He has 3 witnesses tonight, Sal, or 2?
Trying to stay on.
Press the switch on the bottom. Turn it upside down, there's a slide switch.
Okay. We have 3 present if we get to the 3.
Okay. But not your engineers. He'll be at the next
Yeah, correct,
hearing.
correct.
So this obviously will not conclude tonight. And Objectors' Counsel is here, as he or his associate was last time. So Mr. Alfieri is going to introduce some changes that were made and go through that with his architect, I believe, first. I know he has his traffic person if we get that far. Obviously, what we've been doing for this application is allowing questions of the witness after they're finished. With Mr. Simon, we'll go first on behalf of his clients, and then anybody else in the public that he's not representing, and then we'll move to the next witness at that point. But it will definitely not conclude this evening.
Correct.
And also, comments will not be heard tonight. They won't be heard till the end of all the testimony. So only questions will be taken for the witnesses after the board is asked their questions. I'll open it up to the applicant's attorney and then the public. Objector's attorney, I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead, Sal.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Salvatore Alfieri on behalf of the applicant. As the board attorney indicated, we were here actually on December 18th with our initial testimony. At that time, Josh Seawald from Dynamic Engineering, our civil engineer, provided testimony, and Mr. Kaplan from Mr. Simon's office had an opportunity to begin cross-examination of him. Mr. Seawald could not be here tonight. We will bring him back because I know the public still has an opportunity to ask him questions, and I don't believe, and since we did file revised site plans, he's going to have to provide testimony and then be subject to additional questioning. Since the last meeting, we submitted revised architecturals, revised site plan, like I just indicated, a stormwater management report, and an operation and maintenance manual for the stormwater management, a statement of operations. We've also received, and the town has received it as well, final Monmouth County Planning Board approval dated March 25th. We've renoticed for tonight because of the delay in time, and because we supplemented the notice with additional variance relief that was revealed through the last testimony. And we've received reports from both your engineer and your planner, both dated March 26th. That brings us up to speed as to where we are tonight. David Collins is our architect. We're going to call him first. We have a representative from the church, if we get to him, who will provide operational testimony. And then finally, our traffic engineers here again, if we get to him. If that's all we have, I'm going to introduce Mr. Collins, who is our architect.
Before you start, I just want to check, the meeting in December, I forgot that was last year. Are any board members that weren't at that meeting, or any new board members, have they listened to the videotape from that meeting and signed the paper for you? Or anybody could say if they didn't or not.
So I was not at the meeting, but I did listen to the video.
Did you sign the paper?
No, I've not signed it yet. I need to
Okay.
sign
I
it.
can provide that.
Okay,
form,
thank
yeah.
you.
Anybody else? You didn't see the video either, okay.
But we won't be moving
No, I saw the
today
video.
anyway, so-
I saw the video.
Oh, you saw the video,
Yeah.
but she didn't see the video.
So I just need to sign the paper.
So you need to catch up on that, and you can ask her how to do that, so that if you have to vote later on, you're up to date. Okay, I'm sorry.
Since it's a new year, our professionals have been here, I want
You wanna
to
swear
swear in
everybody in?
ours as well as Dave right now, and then we'll do, Sal, your other witnesses when they come up. But if Dave and our professionals, you swear that your testimony with regard to this hearing is going to be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Just for the record, so our professionals have been sworn as well as Dave Collins.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
And Mr. Collins, please place your professional credentials on the record.
Good evening, everyone. I hold a Bachelor of Architecture from Roger Williams University. I'm an NCARB certificate holder. I'm licensed to practice architecture in New Jersey, New York, Florida, and Nevada. A little closer. And all of those licenses are in good standing. I've testified in front of hundreds of boards throughout the state. I don't think I've had the pleasure of this board, but I've spoken, presented in many towns around here.
And your architecture license in New Jersey is in good standing?
It is.
Okay, what kind of work have you done in general? Do you do commercial, residential? What's your focus?
Our practice is pretty diverse. We do a lot of different types of buildings. About half of our business is high-end residential beach houses, and the other half is all commercial. All of my work out of the state is all commercial, so we do everything from light industrial to recreation buildings like this, office buildings, across the board, pretty diverse practice.
Okay, but your specialty, these are your plans you're testifying about tonight?
That's correct.
Your specialty is commercial?
Well, I'm the owner of the firm, so yeah, I mean, I
Okay.
guess, but I mean, I wouldn't say I specialize in one thing. We do everything, but I've done many buildings like this.
Okay, that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, does
Yep.
anybody have any questions before I accept them as, okay, we accept.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And your office prepared the submission, there was a cover letter dated March 20th of 2025 with several exhibits that supplement the original submission, is that correct?
Yes.
And I believe you have a handout that you want to hand to the, I could hand to the board if you want to describe it.
Certainly. So what we did is we printed out all of our exhibits, enough for the board and some for the public so that people could follow along with the presentation. So I'll, yeah.
So maybe, I don't know how many are going to go out to the public, but spread them around.
You know what, whatever is left, I would put on the table and people can grab it. It's the same thing that
We
I.
can share with Marty, you can have my copy when we're done.
You have it on
Here,
your.
here. We have it here?
This is
Marty
one.
will,
You, those two
I'll
will share,
share
we'll
with-
share.
Yeah.
We'll share
and
it.
he'll keep this
Yeah.
for himself.
I'm good. I'm gonna.
We did see.
Plus we have,
Just before you get,
Yeah.
before you give that up, I want to just note, though, that there are a couple of new exhibits, which I'm going to present tonight, that are in this package versus what was submitted.
So let's, we'll wait till Sal.
Sure.
So Sal, these contain some additional things and were submitted, so we're gonna mark this as our next exhibit, which Irene, are we?
I left off at A2
Yeah.
in my notes.
Okay, so A3?
A3.
So Exhibit A3 is sheet A3.00.
Well, Marty, before he's marked, you're going to mark some separately, right?
These are new.
Yeah, so he,
Is he going to mark them as we present them, or are you going to mark everything before we present them? Okay, can we do all of them now ahead of time? And then this way, we can get
Yeah.
that over with?
so, yeah, we'll mark each one, and then if we have to mark the package at the end, we can do that.
Okay.
Just to be safe. So, go ahead, you were going to say A3 we're up to.
Okay, so Exhibit A3 will be sheet A3.00. It's a site diagram with satellite.
I don't know, I got some stuff here, it must be one of these. This is the last A1, A2, so we're changing these.
Is it that big?
A4 will be sheet A400.
Oh, okay.
This is lighting diagrams with calculations.
Yeah, this is Livingston.
Exhibit A5 will be A4.01. This is an enlarged version with the calculations a little bit bigger and easier to see.
I'm sorry, it's a large version of A3.
Lighting calculations.
Thank you.
4.1, you write all this stuff down?
So the rest of this was, what was I,
B2? No. And then we're going to, and then, if, Mr. Chair, if we can, A6 can be this package that we handed out that consists of 3 sheets, front and back. Some of it is a duplication of what we just marked, but at least you'll have a full package as well, if that's okay with you.
That's fine.
Got it, Rob?
So this is now A6.
Yeah.
Maybe I-
I'm going to start with one of the site plan sets. So this would be part of Exhibit A1. Just for reference quickly, this was the set of engineering drawings that were submitted.
What sheet is that?
This is sheet number 6, grading plan.
That's what you're starting with?
Yes.
Okay. Try to turn it a little bit so the public can take a look at that. Board members, do you have your plans? So you don't need to really see that as much?
And going forward,
have a
you
big
now
one,
have,
yeah.
if we bring an iPad, a laptop and a disk, we can put it on the screens going forward?
She's gonna set that up with you guys.
Okay.
I think it's a big one here. Yeah, I got the big one here.
Let's get through all this chaos before we start.
I don't know how we do this.
All right, let all the board members open up their plans because this will be a lot of noise on the microphones unless everybody's mic is off. Vinny, is the mics off over there?
I can see it.
Are they all off? The red, just there's no red on the top. You don't see red, okay. Gene's off too?
That's the new.
Okay. Are you guys ready? Okay, we're gonna start. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to refer to this very quickly. This is Exhibit A1. It's the grading plan from the Dynamic Engineering Civil Drawing Set. And I just really want to do this just to kind of catch up for where we were in December and kind of start the presentation that way. So on the top of this sheet is Route 34. You can see it running across the top of the sheet. The existing church is somewhere over in this area, and the parking area is right in between these two. And so the existing farm stand is shown here, and we're proposing behind the farm stand, our new structure, a plaza and a sports area. Tension basins to the south. So these are the residential properties to the north and to the west, and there are properties to the east on the other side of Route 34. Okay? Okay, I'm referring now to Exhibit A3. These are architectural floor plans.
And in the package we marked as A6, is that sheet A201?
Yes, it is.
So that's on page 2 front, just so it's easier for everyone.
Okay. All right, so again, architectural floor plans. These plans are oriented the same way as a civil set. So the top of these sheets is Route 34 for everyone when you're just kind of getting your bearings. This right edge of this paper is the existing parking lot. So what we've done is we tried to design this building in a way where we could use the building to buffer the activity for our neighbors, our residential neighbors to the side. So what we've done is, since the activity here is with the cars, we put the entry to a plaza area. Again, the building is 2 stories in this area, this L, so that the entryway comes into a plaza area and into a main lobby. Below that main lobby is the gymnasium. The gymnasium can be used for playing sports. It also can be used for a theatrical performance or a lecture. We have a stage to the right of the gym, and we have all the backstage facilities, and we have a loading area that loads either onto the stage or at grade to an entry door into the gymnasium. Okay, to the left side of the gymnasium is the locker rooms and bathrooms. Coming across from the main lobby area, we have a kitchen, we have bathrooms, a multi-purpose room, and then offices for the priest and staff and security. And then coming up from that lobby is a 2-story classroom wing. So there are multiple classrooms on the first floor, and then directly above it here, there's multiple classrooms on the second floor. Inside the double height volume of the gymnasium, we have a viewing area up at the top here. This could be used for storage. It could be used for viewing. We have 2 staircases leading up to that. And so you could look over from this mezzanine into the gymnasium. Again, this is part of Exhibit A3. This is sheet A1.01. These are the architectural exterior elevations. The top elevation is the north, next is the east, then south, and then west. I'm going to start with the south elevation. So the south elevation is our main entrance. It faces towards the parking lot. So you can see here we have a glass entryway. The offices are along here, so this whole face is the plaza. In the back, we see the two-story classroom wing, and to the left, we see the gymnasium and theater. So what we've tried to do is we tried to make any areas that needed to be dark, obviously, like the theater. We tried to make those solid walls with no windows, and we tried to consolidate the glass where we could bring in the most natural light as we could into the space. So you'll see that the lobby has a lot of glass, and the back of the theater really has none. And then looking at the classroom wings, you can see that we've kind of peeled back the panels to create windows and, you know, an alternate finish. So what we're proposing to do is to build this building of concrete tilt-up. So it's a double shell concrete wall that's insulated. They're very durable. They're perform well in fires. So we want to use that for our structural system. So what we've done is on the alternate material, which I'll show you in a rendering later, is we're going to use terracotta panels. So we looked back to the church, the finishes on the church. There's a lot of gray block and there's brick. And so we wanted to try to repeat that to kind of make this cohesive. Even though this is a much more modern building, we wanted these 2 buildings to make some sense on the site together. So moving up to the east elevation, this is the elevation that will face Route 34. Now, Route 34, from Route 34 coming into the site, there's a slight grade change. It slopes down and away from the road. So what we've done is the classroom wing, we've tucked that into the hill. So as you get closer to Route 34, our building is 5 feet below grade. So it reduces the profile and the height appearance from the front in this area. So this is our library, and there's classrooms below. There's an exit stair that comes up through an exterior well, but this building is kind of tucked down. And you can see that on the south elevation as well. You can see how close these windows are on the first floor to grade. The grade kind of comes up to the bottom of the windows. So that helped us kind of push the building down a little bit. The north elevation, again, we tried to keep the back of the gym solid, and then we have some relief with the foyer, and then we have the smaller windows for the classrooms, again with the terracotta panel to kind of set off and try to kind of break up this kind of long element into pieces by kind of slicing it open and using terracotta as a relief. In the west elevation, this faces away from Route 34, so we do here introduce some windows in the gymnasium to bring natural light. Again, I think that this helps to break up kind of the length of this facade. And then you can see that the height of the building drops down to where the stage is. And that piece, again, is solid for kind of obvious reasons that you wouldn't want to have windows in a space like that. Okay. Next, I'd like to quickly talk about signs. We're proposing 2 signs, I believe. That one sign is a sign to mark the name of this building, and so we're proposing to put St. Mina Center on the wall. This is facing towards Route 34, but it's set way back where the plaza is, so it's kind of a directional sign. When you're in the parking lot, you can move towards the sign, and that's where you would enter the building. It's also a place where, if God forbid there's an emergency, they could be directed directly towards that, and it would be obvious. The second sign is a cross. I'm not sure that this is a sign because most religious buildings have religious symbols on them, but you know, if it is a sign, it is a variance condition that we need a second sign on this building. We're only allowed one. And we also need relief for the height that we are proposing. The maximum height for a sign is 15 feet on a building, and we're exceeding that, or we're asking to exceed that for both of those signs, just because of topography and the shape of the building and how far the building is set back. You know, we feel that that's the appropriate location for the
So
signs.
how big are the signs gonna be?
Okay, so the St. Mina sign is 61 square feet. So those are individual letters, but we measured it as a rectangle. So we grabbed even the space around the letters we grabbed.
So the cross, is that a sign? Kate, is a cross a sign?
You know, it's an interesting question, because a lot of, the way the ordinance is written, I think to the letter, it is, but, you know, but typically there are, you know, first of all, it's like a freedom of speech issue a little bit, and then also, a lot of the time there's exemptions for, like, things like spires, or, you know, sorry,
It might not be on.
sorry.
Instead of like a logo, maybe?
I think for our purposes, per the ordinance, the letter of the ordinance, it is a sign. But I would say that the board can, you know, like, when you're looking at that, when you're reviewing it as a variance, I think that's something you can take into consideration. Because typically, the home adult ordinance does as well, it allows religious buildings to have, for example, like steeples or spires, you know, at a certain height, because it's part of the traditional architecture. So you can kind of look at this as something similar, but technically only a 12 square foot sign is permitted for religious uses.
Is the 61 including the cross?
No, the 61 is the named sign. The cross is 17 square feet.
So what is the variance you're looking for that one sign particular? What is the variance? How much are you exceeding what you're allowed there, just for the one sign? Forget the cross. Let's
Forget
just
the
talk
cross.
about the sign.
Kate, could you answer that for us?
Yes, I can. Hold on one second. Signage.
15 feet.
Where are we
Yeah,
here?
15 feet for sure.
Okay. So for a house of, you know, the other thing is that, you know, this is, it's not on. It's
Yeah, it's 12 square feet. I have it in notes.
Yes, okay. This is gonna kind of come down to their testimony. I hate to make it this way, not to be so vague about it, but one of our interpretations for this is that, you know, the house of worship is a conditionally permitted use. The applicant may or may not need D1 variance relief in addition, because, you know, is this a second permitted use? Is this an accessory? So they'll have to put some testimony on with that. And, you know, we'll get to that when they do planning testimony. If it's a house of worship, they're permitted one small wall sign, 12 square feet. Otherwise, non-residential signage is not contemplated in the zone. So the variance is just for having the two signs. You know, there are also both on one wall, which the township typically doesn't permit, but this zone, they're set back, they're set back far from the road, as was testified to, but also this is, they are not contemplated in this zone. So it's really just to have the signs. Okay.
So, if I could, I'll tell you why we made the sign this size, and we can discuss whether it's appropriate or not. But we think about things like the speed of travel on a road, which, you know, Route 34 is somewhat faster. It's a main highway, and we think about how far back the sign is away from the street. So we want to make sure that it's legible, it's not tiny, someone's not looking for it and not paying attention. And we also want to make sure that if there's an emergency, fire trucks can get to it easy. But the sign could be reduced, and we'd be willing to reduce it if the board feels that it's a problem, but that's why we did what we did.
And I will also note, thank you, and I will also note, this is in my letter, but if this were a commercial use in a commercial district, for example, they are allowed two signs on this wall. However, no one sign may exceed 40 square feet. So that's just for comparison purposes. But again, you know, I agree, you know, somewhat with what was just testified to. You know, this is set back from the road. It's a slightly different situation. But that, just for comparison, if this were a commercial use, it would be, two signs would be permitted, but no more than 40 square feet each.
And can you mentioned the height also as a deviation. Can you just give the board the height that's proposed?
Sure. So the ordinance requires signs to be 15 feet off the ground, basically. There are two triggers, but that's the one that's important for this. And, you know, we're proposing this St. Mina sign, the top of that sign to be 20 feet. And we're proposing the top of the cross to be 23'6". I think.
And the reason for the height?
Again, because we're set back so far and there are things going on in front of us, we wanted to get this up high enough so that it would be visible.
And are the signs backlit or?
So the signs are halo lit, so they're solid channel signs, and they'll be lit inside and wash the wall behind it. It won't be shining lights out.
I just have a comment. If the church is there, and this facility is for the parishioners, wouldn't they know that the recreation center is there? Do we need to have such big signs to let everybody know it's there?
Excuse me, public, no clapping, no noise. You'll have a chance to be heard. Thank you.
Certainly the parishioners would know it's there. Of course they would. A couple of the activities that are going to happen is men's church league basketball, so the church that's coming to play them wouldn't necessarily. But as we said, this is not something that you know, we have our heels dug in on. If the board feels the sign should be a little smaller, we're definitely willing to make it smaller. Okay?
Anybody else have comments on the signs? You want it smaller?
I think I said enough.
Go ahead.
Okay, all right. Next, I'm going to refer to A3. This is in the packet is sheet A3.00. What we've done here is we've overlaid the proposed work on a satellite image of the area. So along the left side of the drawing, you can see the residential structures to the left and the bottom, and then across Route 34, across the top, you can see the residential structures. And what we wanted to look at in this diagram was how light from inside the building could possibly affect the neighbors, our neighbors to the side. And so each one of these yellow triangles that you see on this drawing represents glazing on the exterior of the building. So we kind of put a cone like this is like a diagram of light coming out of the building. So I'm going to start at the bottom of the drawing. You can see that these windows are relatively small, and the distance away from these neighbors is pretty great. And there currently is, in this zone here, a tree buffer that's here, and we're proposing to thicken that tree buffer all the way along the property to the end of where our building ends here. So we're going to supplement that. And I can say from my visual experience of going through this buffer, some of the buffer is really good. Some of the buffer has holes in it. Some of the buffer is really good up high and not as good down low. So the landscape architect took that into account, and we basically are adding all of this landscaping to try to fill in the deficiencies that are there and supplement that to create a nice buffer. So it'll partly be what's there today, plus what we're going to add, we feel will be a nice buffer. So these lights that are kind of in the middle but facing up, those are clerestory, those are high windows that let some light into the gymnasium. Again, pretty small and really far away from any residential view line. The ones to the right face to the church, so those aren't so much of an issue. This bigger one that faces towards Route 34 is really relatively low to the ground, and we have topography change, so not a major sight line to these. ones to the top of the sheet is the library. Those are up a little higher, but again, the building's built into the ground, so they're not so high in the air. And those are partially buffered by the existing building that's in front of it, in between the street. And then, so when we move to the left side, again, the first 5 windows are relatively small. They're more kind of rectangular, small windows. So in my opinion, those will definitely easily be buffered. And then the one largest window is the back side of the lobby. So as you come in on the far side of the lobby, we have glazing on that side. Again, we feel that this buffer is going to be great and it's going to work good, especially in this area. We noted that the existing buffer is up high is good, but needs to be filled in down low. So we feel that what we supplement here will fill that in. But we're also willing to darken the glass on that as well, so that if there's, if there is a little bit of a sight line through, that we can knock that light down in the glazing so that we don't get so much transmitted light outside. I happen to bring a sample with me. If anyone wants to see it, I could pass it up.
Do we need to have that back there?
Do you need to have it? In my opinion, you don't need to have it. It's an extra layer of protection.
No, the window itself.
So, I mean, the answer is no, you don't need it, but there's a lot of benefits to having it. It's going to bring in northern natural light, which is great. Not going to receive much solar gain from that, and you're going to get a lot of light in, which will allow them to keep the lights off during the day and only really use them when they need to. So we'd love to keep it, but the architectural answer is no, it doesn't have to be there. But if we could keep it, we would be happy to supplement the type of glazing to make sure that there's not too much light coming out of there.
Can you tell me how tall is the building, the one that's facing
That's what I
all
was
the
gonna
houses on the left?
So the way this is calculated, you probably know, is a grade plane. So it's an average of the grading, and we are just under 35 feet tall to the top. So that, for us, is kind of measured below grade because we're up high, but then we're dug in. So the back of this building, it's a 35-foot line. So the highest point would be the gym. Now, I'll get to this a little bit later, but
What is that point? What is that?
35 feet, 34'6".
Wait, that's the highest point at the back of the gym?
That's not, yes. Yep, and the classroom, well,
Why don't you
It's
bring up
measure-
the,
yeah,
What's the highest point?
yeah,
How you calculate that, because board members may not be.
sure.
so, again, referring to,
point at the back of the
Yes.
Okay, so that's 34'6". Is the,
you said the average was 34.
it is, but that's the lowest part of the grade, so that's our worst condition. So that's where it's like the worst, the highest.
And that point is the one that faces, I'm sorry, that point is the one that faces the houses closest to the houses, am I right?
This part does, yes.
Okay, on the other map. Yeah, I
Yeah.
just want everybody, okay.
Yeah, that faces north and faces our neighbors to the north on Tiburon.
Okay.
That's your question, right?
Yep.
Question for you
Sorry.
is, you're talking about light. How late will those lights be on?
We have someone coming up to give testimony about time and stuff like that. Do you want to wait for that?
yeah, the next witness will have all those details.
What's the height of the existing tree buffer?
If the structure is 34
Yeah.
feet, is what you just said. So then the existing tree buffer that you just pointed out, do you know what the height of it is?
I don't know the exact height, but I can say that there is an elevation change right in that buffer. So the grading from our natural grade on our site goes uphill, I'm going to estimate 4 to 5 feet. And those trees sit on top of that. And those trees, to me, are very mature. They look like they could be 30 or 40 feet tall. I never measured them.
Well, 30 or 40 feet, if it's 30 feet, then it's not as tall as the structure. If it's 40 feet, then it is at least 6 feet taller than the structure.
I believe that if it's 30 feet, it is as tall as a structure because there's a grade change. So those trees are sitting on a hill, and then they're that high.
Not at the point where there's the gymnasium, I think you said, because that's 34.
Right.
Right, and so if there's 4 feet of grade change, 4 feet of hill, plus a 30-foot tree, okay, it's 34 versus 34 and a half. I'm estimating the height. I didn't, there's no way for me to calculate the height, so I'm estimating it, but my visual estimation is that's how tall they are.
Second question is related is, you said you're gonna thicken that existing tree buffer. What exactly are you planning to do? Are you gonna plant are you gonna plant more full-size trees or full-size, like evergreen, brush? Or are you gonna plant something that's not full-size and then over time it's gonna grow to thicken the buffer? What
So
exactly are you proposing?
there's a landscape plan that was prepared by the civil engineer. I didn't prepare it. And all the specimens are shown on the landscape plan. There is a planting height that is much lower than, of course, the full-grown height. I will say that from my visual walkthrough, the area that needs the most help, generally speaking, is the lower area of the tree buffer that's there, that the trees, to me, look much fuller towards the top and more open on the bottom. So the bottom, 7 or 8 feet, you could see through in areas. But
And further in response, the civil engineer did provide general landscape testimony last meeting, but probably didn't get into that level of detail because it wasn't relevant, so when he comes back, he could supplement that testimony.
Yeah, and John, I would just also add, just when we reviewed the plans, they're proposing rows of evergreens along that.
It's evergreens?
Yes, it's evergreens. It's fairly standard. They have it 6 to 8 feet height at planting for most of them. It's difficult to source them higher than that, and they don't have as good of a chance of survival. So that's usually what you'll see: 6 to 7 to 6 to 8 feet.
Now, I don't know if I mentioned the last meeting, but we probably will have an on-site on the property. So maybe Sal, put on your notes for the on-site that we do a balloon. And that's where we put balloons on the ground and put them to the top of the windows or the building. And this way we can really visualize how it would look, and we could even go over to Tiburon and walk around there and see what you see from there too.
Yeah, and you did mention at the last meeting, perhaps even for the light poles too, to see
Yeah,
that.
well, definitely the light poles. So just keep that note separately, and we'll figure a date for that in the near future, now that the weather's getting better.
I do appreciate your consideration about the light from the classrooms affecting the neighbors, but also the privacy. I'm looking at those buildings, they're near people's backyards with swimming pools and what have you. I know, can those people in the classrooms on the second floor be looking down into these people's backyards?
so that's the intent of the buffer, of strengthening that buffer so that you don't.
Those trees prevent that from happening. There are people's residents there, and I am concerned not about the light. That's probably the least of their problems. It's more about the privacy in your own backyard and your bedroom. I mean, there's bedroom windows on those houses.
Public, please, let's not keep doing the same thing over and over again. I know you don't like things, and you'll have an opportunity to voice your opinion at the end of the hearing, but not during the hearing, because it just prolongs things, not polite. Thank you.
Francine, I don't have the exact measurement, but I will say that, there's some pools back there, but there's a substantial distance to the actual houses. Yeah, there's a few pools. I don't have the number offhand, but I would say, it's.
I'm looking at the plans, the elevation plans, and it shows every house has a pool.
Okay, well.
Except for one.
Yeah, one does.
One of them got someone got you know what, they're winterized in the photo I'm looking at, so I couldn't see them as well. So there are pools, some are closer to the house than others, but in terms of the actual upper floors of the houses, I think we're looking at several hundred feet, at least something close.
I'd like to know, with those levels of windows in the classrooms, what level are those to even, not just
Yes.
the backyard, but those people's homes, those bedrooms?
So Francine, and I'm doing the testimony for the engineers, not here. So,
Yeah.
but if you look on the cover sheet, the second page of the combined site plans, it shows the 200-foot buffer from the property line. That's
Okay.
for the notice, and almost all of the houses are almost exactly 200 feet from that property line. And so then you look at, so it's 200 feet just from the property line to the house, and then you have whatever offhand, the proposed facility is from their property line.
Okay,
So, you know, for the most part, it's like, I would say so that's between 90 feet and like 115 feet. So we're at like 290 to over 300 feet from the actual residences. So, and I know there is a height differential, but I don't, they can put testimony on if the board has any questions, they can provide it, but I don't see that being a major issue.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that, you know, we certainly don't want to be looking into our neighbors' properties. So, you know, so there are a couple things that we could do. We could frost all of those windows on the north side, so at least that gets some light, natural light into the space, but you will not be able to see out of any of those windows to the north. So that might be something nice. The other thing we can do is during the balloon test, if you want us to bring our drone, we'd be happy to bring our drone and hover it at the height of the windows and have a good look at all those houses. We're happy to help with any way we can.
Or balloons. Okay, that works.
Certainly, I'm sure we can, you know, obscure it so there's no view out.
I think that's a good suggestion. So put that down or revise that or somebody write it.
Okay.
No comments?
Okay, next exhibit, again from A3, this is sheet A1.00. So these are some rendered views of the proposed building. I'm going to start with the top two views, which obviously are taken from the same vantage point. We're standing on Route 34. We're looking into the site. And you can, if we start with drawing number 1, you can see in the far distance, you can see the entry plaza and the St. Mina Center sign. So that gives you kind of an indication of how far back that sign is set. And then to the right of that, you'll see the cross that's over one of the wing walls near the plaza. It's not the same wall, but it's a little bit closer than the St. Mina sign is. And you'll see the windows that are next on the right is the meeting room. And then all the way to the right is our classroom wing. Again, you can really see here how much this building is kind of pushed into the hill in this lower area because, you know, there's 2 stories or 1.5 stories on the left side, and then on the front, it's really only a story and a bit. So,
And I think this is common sense, but the building to the far right, the orange building, is the existing building right now.
that's the existing building, and exactly right.
Little farmhouse?
Yep, the farmhouse, farm stand. Yep, right. Yeah, and we were proposing that maybe we could paint that to kind of unify it to make it look like it's part of the project. So that's what we're showing here. You'll also note here the 4 poles, light poles. We'll talk about that quite a bit in a minute, but on this rendering, I just want everyone to know that this was the original scheme with 4 poles at 50 feet. Just so we know, we're going to talk about you know, lowering those poles in a minute, but I wanted to show the worst condition here to you. And if you look to drawing number 2, what we've done is, again, we took that same rendering and we added in the fence and netting around the soccer field. So you can see the thin black poles and the netting that's 20 feet tall that wraps around to stop balls from going into the parking lot or onto Route 34. And you'll notice that the bottom 4 feet is a little bit darker. That's because that's black chain link, and that has the added benefit of creating fall protection because we have retaining walls that are around this soccer field, which I'll explain as well in a minute. The bottom 4 views are, you know, well, the bottom number 3 is we're kind of right by the entry plaza. You can see the lower 1-story element for the offices. We put an arch colonnade across the front, kind of break the scale of things down. So the entry would be tucked in right in the left, right along the wall that has the St. Mina church sign. And then we have 3 interior views of what the foyer will look like on drawing number 4. This is with your back to the north, looking back to the entrance on the south. And you can see the glazing that faces in towards the gymnasium. And the bottom 2 views are views of the gymnasium, one facing towards the stage, drawing number 5, and drawing number 6 facing towards the viewing platform that we have on the north side. And in drawing number 6, it's a little bit easier to see those windows that face to the west. So our detention basin's behind there. It's pretty open back there. So we wanted these to bring that light, which you can see in this rendering. You see the light coming into the floor of the gymnasium there.
So on number 4, is that facing towards the neighbors? Is that
No.
the view?
No, but you could imagine that it would be similar facing the other way because the two ends are glazed very similar. So again, we could frost that north one. So if you did turn around to look the right way, it would look similar to this.
Okay, so frosting will eliminate looking out of it, obviously, but how much light is reduced by going out of that or coming in?
I can't say an exact number. We can find the film and we can figure out how much it will knock that light down. Again, if it's a problem, we can use the darker glass, which I have here. But I brought a sample with me, if you want to see it. Yeah, whenever you're ready. So just be careful because it's 2 sheets of glass. I brought an insulating unit so that you can see that an insulating unit has a little bit of a tint, and then this is the dark layer that would be replace one of those 2 layers.
And can the board keep that? Or can
Sure.
we, do you want the hard
Are we
copy?
submitting
If it's
this?
part of the testimony,
We
yes.
So
have to
that's gonna
submit the
be-
glass?
Sure. At the end of the testimony, I'd just like to write the numbers down on it so I have it in my
A7?
stock.
A7. And could you again identify what that A7 depicts?
So there's 2 pieces of glass here. What if each one, can you explain what each one is?
Sure. So the dark thin piece is the one layer that would be darkened on the insulating unit. So an insulating unit, yes, the insulating unit, which is in your left hand, is pretty much used universally now. It's a dual pane of glass with an air or an argon-filled barrier in the middle so that it's insulated. And the reason I brought the 2 is so that you could put them on top of each other, and that approximates what you would get for an assembly.
Well, yeah, you still see through it. What percent dark, I'm thinking
That's
of
not
like
the
cars when you tint them. What percent is that?
I don't know how much the frosting knocks the percentage down. When we come back though, I can find a frosting film and we can talk to the manufacturer and ask how much calculated light would emit from that. So we can kind of combine those things with the dark glazing and the frosting and get you a number on what
Right,
that
but
would be.
Because I'm just thinking like car tints, there are tints that you can't even see inside.
Yeah, so
So if you used a tint like that, that would make a big difference.
yeah, so certainly we could use mirrored glass and that would be fine. That would definitely knock down the light a lot.
But what you're showing them as A7 is not the frosting, that's just the darker glass.
That's just the darker glass. So what I'm trying to do here with this sample is I'm trying to balance, getting natural light into the space, but also obscuring light from going out of the space. So yes, we definitely could go darker. I'm trying to find a happy medium.
Okay.
I'm not sure if this is your testimony that you'll provide, but is this going to be just for the basketball facility, the indoor basketball facility? Is this just for the private use of the members of the church, or will this be open to the public, meaning either Homedale, public school? I'm sorry.
You gotta
The
have a mic.
The next witness.
The next one, I'll ask the question then.
Okay, one of the comments from the Environmental Commission I just wanted to address at this point, well, part of it at this point. There was a comment about the master plan and preservation of farmland and view sheds that I didn't have to admit I didn't fully understand what they were asking because the comment was very narrow towards the turf field, and I don't know if they were asking about the actual turf field itself or
No,
if they were asking
Bill
about
might
something
be able to
else.
help us with that. You didn't read that letter?
And find out what they're referencing.
I can do that. Yeah, I'd just like to say that there is a turf field there now. It's a natural turf field. It's not an artificial turf field. There's a small soccer field there now. We are enlarging that for sure, and we're proposing for it to be artificial turf just for maintenance reasons. It would be a lot easier for the church to keep that than to have to mow the lawn. it's something we're willing to talk about, but that's why I don't have a full answer on the
All right, so
environmental.
you can find out and let us know next time.
I will, I'll decode that a little bit.
Please.
I'm not on the environmental commission, but, having read their letters, I think what they're saying is that, a conservation goal is to preserve the scenic corridors. And yes, there is a building going up as well, but when I read this as saying whether turf field fulfills this goal, I think the answer is, no building fulfills the goal, but that's not the point of the master plan. Your planner will talk about that, but it's more about the whole development, the lights, stuff like that, everything that is part of the turf field. So
Okay.
I think it's not so much
Not the turf per
yeah,
se.
because obviously, when the view shed, you're not going to see what kind of material it is, but I would look at it as more of the whole picture of what's being proposed here that goes along with it.
Okay.
Can I ask really quick on picture number 5, how many basketball courts are in this gymnasium?
So we tried to make this flexible. It's set up for one basketball court, or it could be set up for 2 basketball courts playing the opposite way across.
So a full court, if you're going lengthwise, or then you could go split it
Right.
into 2, half and half. the
Right.
other.
So from the theater to the viewing area, it's one court, but those could be lifted up, and the other ones could be dropped down, and you could play from the Route 34 going towards the back. And when you do that, you could have 2 games simultaneously.
2 full court,
Two
2
half
full
Yeah.
courts?
2 half courts.
Like village schools have,
So younger
like
kids.
village.
Yeah.
So
These are actually 2 full courts.
Is this an
No, it's 2
official
full courts.
basketball
Two full-
court?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's official, the
Oh,
full
sorry.
court.
Sorry.
I just want to make sure, so it's
Well, we're
possible
gonna-
to do 2
Yeah.
full
We have,
court
you
basketball?
have the
No, no.
floor plan.
Half courts.
Well, wait.
So Yeah.
Identify which exhibit.
Okay, so I'm on exhibit A3, this is A2.01, it's the floor plans. And you can see dotted in on this floor plan that we've created the main court runs, from the stage to the locker rooms. You can see that one outlined. But then if you look the other way, you could fit 2 full-size courts, and we used high school size courts. All courts are different. College is bigger, pros are bigger. We used high school size courts for our reference. And we have a folding partition. There's a dotted line, and the idea is you could split that. You could have one thing going on one side, one on the other.
So when you say official full court, is that high school level?
That's what, yeah.
High school,
So, and then the other court, the full-size one is, what is that, college, professional? What is
still
that?
high school. It'll be taped off as high school.
No, the full court.
Yeah.
There are 3 options for full courts. Either one single full court, a high school court, or you could divide the space in half and have 2 full-size courts the other way. So
Okay.
normally, it would just be set up for 1 court.
I got it. Okay. I didn't see the middle part.
Okay, to move on?
Okay, we're good.
Okay. Last thing I just want to talk about quickly on this sheet A1.00 of Exhibit A3 is the materials. We have 3 major materials on this building. All of the window trims and doors are dark bronze anodized. Bulk of the panel bulk of the building is gray. The concrete panels will get a special textured paint that kind of resembles stucco a little bit, has a little bit of stipple to it. And then bottom is a picture of the terracotta panel, and we all know what terracotta is. It's the potting plants. It's that kind of orangey brown color. So this will be actually natural terracotta. And so the idea is the terracotta matches the bricks on the church, and the gray concrete matches the gray accents on the church. And so we kind of unified those through the materials.
Before you move off that, can you discuss the mechanicals?
Sure. Okay, so you know what? I'm gonna move off it to discuss that. All right. So I'm gonna move back to sheet A2.01.
I have a question on 6. I don't see N5 and 6. Are there any lights currently in that gymnasium?
There will be lights in the gymnasium. They're not in the rendering. Yes.
What type of light?
LED. LED high bay lights. Yes.
All right, then I have another question that's not in the rendering, but I just want clarification. For this outdoor soccer field, or whatever, is there gonna be bleachers? I don't see it in here, and I know you put a net.
That'll be the next line of test. He has
Okay.
exhibits to show that.
Yeah.
There'll be,
And he'll handle that, not someone else.
Yeah, we probably can jump. You know what, maybe if you want, I'll kind of jump to it quickly. This is sheet A 2.01. We do show a couple of bleachers along the side, just metal bleachers for the parents to watch the kids play. This field, and we'll get into it a little bit more, there's no amplification, no music, no scoreboard, none of that. This is set up for recreational play. It's not set up for tournament play or competitive play. It's a 7-on-7 field. It's much smaller than a standard soccer field. So even if you wanted to play soccer on it, it's much, even if you wanted to open it to the public, it's not a real soccer field. It's much shrunk down. It's a 7-on-7 field. Okay. So, but yes, we do show a couple of bleachers there. It's really just kind of thrown in there. We didn't really work on it too much, but the idea is the parents could watch the kids play. Okay, staying on A2.0, I want to talk a little bit about mechanical. So we are proposing mechanical equipment on the roof. And what we've done, on the second floor plan, you can see that the gymnasium is a double height space and the classroom wing is a double height space, but the lobby space is a single height space. And what we've done is we've built a big wall and created an equipment yard. So while it is on the first story of the roof, we built the height of the building up so that it's inside the building without a roof on it, so to speak. And we did that purposely so that so that we could block the sound from any of this equipment from traveling over to the north. So even the opening to access it, we have on the church side of the site. So that's the equipment yard. And what we did do as well, we feel this equipment yard is big enough, but the MEP engineer hasn't designed all the systems yet. If we do need to put smaller equipment up on this classroom wing, we have a screen that goes around it with acoustic panels. That's shown on sheet A1.01. You can see on the north elevation, there's an equipment screen here.
And the mechanicals that are, I guess they would be closest to the parking lot then?
The mechanicals are, the bulk of the mechanicals are tucked between the gym and the classroom wing, again, walled in.
So could the mechanicals be seen from the parking lot?
No,
How would they be shielded?
they're shielded with the walls. They're in an equipment yard. I'm sorry.
could you define what equipment you're thinking would be on this roof?
So we would have, definitely have HVAC equipment, so rooftop package equipment for heating and air conditioning. Those would be our biggest. We'd have some ventilators up on the roof for fresh air, those types of things.
Can you provide a roof plan? Just do you think that's, yeah, because I don't
Certainly.
see it in the package. Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Just see how far they're gonna be set back, stuff like that. Thanks.
Okay. I'm going to next go to sheet A4.01. This is exhibit A5. Okay, so we've been working with Musco Lighting on the sports lighting. And so what this exhibit shows is two options for sports lighting. We heard the board at the last meeting, and so we understood that there was some concern about having 4 50-foot tall poles. And so we went back to Musco and we asked them to look at how we could lower the height of those poles, even if we needed to increase the number of poles to get a similar lighting pattern on the field. So I'm going to start by saying that the lighting, again here, this is for recreation sports. This is not for competition sports. So where we're averaging about 30-foot candles, the high school, as an example, would have 50-foot candles. And I know this because Musco Lighting did all the lighting at the high school the softball fields, and the tennis fields, tennis courts at the high school. So I have the data to compare, one project, our project, to what you probably know from in town that you've seen. So where the football field has 80-foot tall poles with about 14 lights on each pole, in our original scheme, we're proposing 4 poles at 50 feet, but there's only 4 lights on each of those poles. And so that accounts for the big difference in lighting levels that we're proposing versus what you would need for competition play. So this is recreation, just out playing and have some lights and you're out playing. So you'll see that, we vary from, some hot spots at 43 and we're down at 27, 24 towards the middle of the field because there are 4 poles and each of these poles is trying to light a quadrant of this field. And so as the light gets further away towards the center, the numbers start to dip down, mostly in the center of this area. So we asked Musco to look to try to get light poles down at 30 feet. And they came back and said, we can get them down to 40 feet. So what you see on the right is 6 poles at 40 feet. Now, where we have 4 lights on each pole on the original scheme, we're going to get 2 to 3 lights on each of these poles at the 40-foot height. And you can see that the numbers are fairly similar. Again, our average is almost identical at 30-foot candles. And you have, the numbers are a little different. Some of the hot spots are at 41. The lows, which you can see right at center field, is all the way down to 20. So it's a little bit dark in the middle of the field on this scheme. But that's okay. It's not terrible. But the real downgrade into this scheme is that the lights are starting at a lower elevation, and as they shine down towards the center of the field on that angle, what you end up getting is up above the area of play, it gets really dark in the middle. And so the concern is if a ball's lofted up, that you would lose it in the lights. Now, again, this is not competition play, so we can live with it, but that's really why the 450-foot poles are better, because if a ball's lofted up, it's a little safer for the kids. They won't get lost in the lights.
A question for you. You've said it numerous times, this is not competition. So you're telling me other churches are not coming to play against their church?
I can't answer that. I think operations can answer that.
That's what I would consider competition.
Yep, I think operations will answer that for you.
Okay.
Yep.
And my question would be, if it's only for the church, again, or the camp, would you need the lights? Because I would assume the camp is during the day.
The camp is during the day. That's correct. This would be for kind of the shoulder seasons when kids would play into the evening when it's still dark. That's the only time really it would be used. And I think operations can touch upon hours. I can say that the lights were designed with a control system to automatically turn it off, so they never could be left on accidentally. So the church does have control over those, and there are we can set time limits on. They shut off at this hour for sure every night. But the idea is that these aren't intended to be on a program where they're on every day and turn off at some time. The idea is that they get turned on if someone is playing, and that's it.
Going off of that, who would have the ability to turn the lights on? Like you mentioned, if it was just kids that wanted to play, like can any parishioner just come and turn the lights on?
Well, they'd have to have access to the system from the church. So whether it's a GUI system or a phone app, the church would have ultimate control over who has that.
So there would be some sort of organization when you can't just come to a field and play like a park. You would have
Right.
some sort of organization
Right.
behind the field.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, and when you say non-competition, I know that it might be casual games, but you're saying that it's not something where like a traveling team or club teams or something like that aren't going to rent this out and use this because it's not even the right size.
That's correct.
So even like kids teams, it's not the right size for that. It's too small.
Yeah, look, I mean, little kids, like real little kids play on little fields.
Right.
So, I mean, technically, I suppose little kids could probably manage fine on this. But it's not set up for competition. The idea is not to have all the towns come play in a tournament or some kind of showcase or something like that. This is really for the church to use to play sports and have kind of a nice area to do that in.
So
Can
you
I
said,
segue? Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, somebody's going to testify on the record of all these things that you're saying.
Yes.
Because you're just handling the architectural.
That's right.
Okay.
Can I ask a question, because you've been specific about the soccer field and you're the designer? The basketball courts, are those competition courts?
So again, this getting into operations a little bit. The only thing that I know for sure is that some of the church play in a men's league that they play. I think one evening a week where that one church will play the other church in basketball. But that's maybe 10 people from another church.
I
come and
mean,
play
my
basketball.
question is like, if they wanted to, are the basketball courts competition level courts?
Yeah,
The way they're set
the
up?
basketball courts were designed as
Inside.
high school courts. That's right. Yes, that's the size of them.
And you have one last exhibit, don't you?
I do. I'm going to skip over A400 because, again, that's just kind of a larger. Oh, you know what? I will. I'll speak to it quickly. A400. We did this exhibit just to show the relationship. The relationship of the light spill versus the neighborhood, so to speak. So this is a little bit blown out. You can see the outline of the houses that are around. Again, this seems.
Excuse me, sorry, that was marked as A.
Oh, sorry.
A4,
A4.
correct?
A4 sheet A4.00. This is set up just like the last sheet we looked at. The 4 poles is on the left, the 6 poles is on the right, and you can see, how quickly you get to 0-foot candles. These numbers that are around the field of play here, that's kind of where the numbers start to go to 0. And the way that Musco does this is they have these downward facing lights that are fully shielded on the sides.
Shadow box.
They're like a shadow box, yeah. And so they're really focused light to shoot straight down in front of the light. They're not kind of just blasting light everywhere. So they're not shooting light up into the sky. They're just really focused down. And you can really see how effective they are by these numbers that wrap around the edges here. Gets down to 0 very quickly. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to A1. This is Dynamic Engineer's grading plan. I want to talk about the retaining walls quickly. Okay, so as I testified earlier, the grade is traveling the ground level is traveling down away from Route 34. It's gradual. It kind of looks quote unquote flat out there, but it really isn't because it's such a big space. And so in order to make the soccer field flat, we had to kind of take our hand and whoosh down into the hill a little bit. And what that does is it creates a need for a little retaining wall on the high side and a little retaining wall on the low side so that we can flatten that out. And so if you look at this, we have this retaining wall wraps around 3 sides. And this side, on the east side of Route 34, in this corner, the field is low and the retaining wall is high. So when you drive by on 34, in that corner, you're not seeing a retaining wall because you're looking over the retaining wall because it's dropping down away from you, right? And as that slope comes across, that retaining wall becomes exposed to view from 34 because in this corner, where our field is slightly higher than the ground around the field. That same thing happens in this lower corner where the ground outside the field is lower and the field is a little higher. So just to kind of make it simple, this retaining wall in the top left corner is 4.5 feet tall. In the top right corner is 1.2 feet tall, again, facing towards 34 there. In this bottom corner is 2.5 feet. And where it ends over here is 3 feet. So 4-foot retaining walls is what's allowed per ordinance. So there is a small portion here. It's about 60 feet in total on this corner and coming down along the building where this wall is 4.5 feet tall. So we're 6 inches above what is allowed by ordinance. So that creates a variance condition. And part of the reason that we have that situation is we're very close to that existing building. And we have some stormwater stuff in there. We have to hit inverts, and it's just really difficult to shave off that 6 inches because we just don't have a lot of space to work with. If we had a little more room, we could have shaved 6 inches off the, graded it out a little bit and made that variance go away. But again, I'd like to point out that 4.5 feet, though, it's not visible from 34. It's inward on the site.
You covered everything. No, I got everything.
That's all I have for my direct testimony.
So is that, Pete, is that an additional variance request?
It's a variance or a waiver. I think it's a variance, the retaining wall. Yes, it's on page 13 of our report.
It's on the list.
So how many variances in total are being
There's a
asked?
lot.
There's a lot. We typically don't like total, I don't think it's usually useful to total them up like that because, first of all, things will change over the course of a hearing. And also I think contextually you have to look at, the severity of some of them versus some of the other. But I will say, because they are looking for a D variance, all of these things will be taken into account when they do their testimony. The other thing comes from, especially the way that the home bell ordinance is written. In a lot of cases, they're either, goes both ways. We have some applications where, because the zone doesn't contemplate it, there's technically no C variances, but then in other cases, there are, like, for example, the signage, because this does not contemplate signage.
That's an additional variance. the
Yes.
signage,
So, I don't know the exact number offhand, but, everything's laid out in our letter, and if the applicant does choose to change anything, to get rid of a
Can I
variance,
ask the applicant's attorney, how many variances are you asking?
Well, I didn't count them either, but at the end, because the number really, in
Yeah.
our
We're
world,
talking
isn't
about 10,
relevant.
10?
Approximation.
I didn't count them.
Yeah,
But-
and I agree with Sal. It's just not something we really, you can kind of. Look, this is a long letter that I wrote. It kind of gives you an idea of the scope of it, but it's a large application, and I think that I think you really want to focus on the D variances more than which are related to some bulk standards and stuff like that. Rather than the number. So.
Right, and when the last witness that we'll present someday is going to be the planner, and that planner is going to go variance by variance. So you'll have a
Right.
very good summary, because they, as Kate indicates, they might change as we react to some of the comments.
Like the light poles, you went from
Yeah,
50, you're
exactly,
now
yeah.
20, 30, or 40 right now.
Still be a
Well,
variance,
that'll
but
still-
it'll be a
yeah.
different variance.
But just for example, like with the retaining wall that was just discussed, that's going to be a variance. But typically, and I would give this recommendation to the board, I'm sure their planner will say the same thing, is that the concern with retaining walls, they have to be structurally sound, obviously, and they have to be certified. The engineer office will do that, but we really don't want there to be unsightly retaining walls facing the public right away. That's the purpose of, typically.
And that's why you made reference to the fact that
Exactly.
when you're driving on 34, it will be unseen to.
Yes, they face their interior retaining walls, and not just 34, but from, other properties, things like that, and their planner will address all of those things. So that's why, it's not, I don't want to, I think when you kind of count the variances, you're, in a way, you're giving them equal weight, and I don't think that that's, for the board's perspective, I wouldn't recommend weighing them that way.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. We're going to open up to a lot of questions probably, so before we open it up and the board gets a chance, I wanted to ask you about elevations. I'm trying to understand, I'm looking at the contour. If I was standing on any of the property lines of the neighbors, I'm seeing numbers like 175, I think, and it's hard to tell because it's very faded. But on the property lines, I was looking at the elevations and trying to look at what the height of the building will be at ground level. Now, I know there's an average, there's a formula that you measure all four sides of the building and you come up with a number. So I want to know, at the building facing the neighbors, at ground level, according to what I see here, that it's around 165 or 164. And then it seems like it's going up towards the neighbors or higher up.
That's right. So our finished floor is at elevation 165.
Okay.
All right. So the first floor is at 165, and you pretty much from about the gymnasium or the lobby area going up towards Route 34 and over towards the neighbor, the ground is going uphill.
Okay, so
Right.
if you look where the gym is, okay, and you go straight across towards the Tiburon neighbors,
Here.
what's the elevation going up to? How
Yeah.
high is the neighbor's property
So
over the
we
building?
get up to, wait, let me get my glasses.
I can't see either, it's too tiny. I have a small version here. We'll give you a chance to ask you.
I'm just saying procedurally, when the witness is describing something on the plan, he has his back to the audience, and we can't see at all what he's referring to.
Okay.
So we're just gonna ask him to maybe repivot so that he can present.
You know what the problem was? We
neighbors can
couldn't
see.
see it when he was standing on
Yeah.
the other side, so we couldn't see at all what he was doing.
We're just seeing his back.
Okay.
I apologize for that. I'm not sure how to
You
get
could
it.
say it twice. You could tell
Yeah,
the board
okay,
and then
sure.
turn it.
So, a little more. All right, I'm gonna try and stay back here. So, is that good from here? That's okay? All right. So the 165 here, and this starts to go up. We're at 167, 168, 169, 171. So right across here, 171 and 172 tracks to right there. So at 171, that's 6 feet.
Okay, and does it keep going? We don't know what the elevations are in the neighbor's property going up.
We don't.
Okay. So
My from walking the site, I'm going to use an imperfect term and say relatively flat. It's not, it kind of goes up and then tapers off. It's not flat, but it tapers off. So, but I don't know the elevation like at the neighbor's house.
You know what I'm getting at, right? I'm just trying to see if I was standing in their property, what am I looking at straight across? Am I looking towards the upper half of the building? Or am I seeing the whole building? You know, that's what I'm looking, that's the answer I'm looking for.
Okay, so if we just discounted the buffer for a second, right? Because
Right.
the
Let's say
buffer, you
there's
won't
no
see
buffer.
anything. But let's say there's no.
In the wintertime, like right now,
No.
there's nothing there.
No,
presume.
the winter time the buffer's still there. But I can answer your question. There's
It's there,
pine
but
trees.
it's not buffering.
So he's,
We're gonna plan
are
it.
you saying this shorter buffer is pine trees, so
Yes.
it's year-round? Is that what you're trying to say?
So what we're adding is low and will be year round, and what's there now is high and is year round.
Evergreens.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Alright.
exactly.
Dimitri, Mr. Collins, I think I kind of, one thing that I think has been asked before, and I just want to clarify this. I'm sorry, I don't know, I'm looking at sheet, the one that was part of the site plan package drawing, the one with the building elevations on it, sorry, that would be,
The grading plan?
no, building, A 1.01. So, if I'm looking at this properly, so I know you said that, and I will just start this off by saying that the way you measured building height at 34, about 34 and a half feet, that is correct per Homedale ordinance. That is how building height is measured in Homedale, so nothing I'm saying changes that. But if you look, I'm looking at the south exterior elevation. So the main floor level is 165. The gym floor level, as you know, I know you said it's a little lower, that's 162 and a half.
Right.
And so then the roof is where, so what you're really seeing at that far end of the gym, you're seeing the 34 feet, 6.5 inches. And then you're also seeing the 2.5 foot difference
The difference there, yes.
between the gym and the first floor level.
That,
So
at
the,
go ahead, sorry.
so the highest building point technically would be about 37.
It actually, I
Above
have
grade.
to
Okay.
add on to that
Okay,
a touch.
yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I agree with you. So as you get down to the corner of the gym, the grade is dropping down. And so I misspoke earlier when I said that corner was 35. It's 35 for definition is 35. But you're exactly right that the height at that corner where there's not grade up by the building is the 34 plus the 2.5. So let's call that 37. And then there's a small bonus for parapet to hide the roof, and that's 2 feet. So really in that very low corner, when you add all those things up, it is 39 feet right there.
Okay. yes. And so, and a parapet is also not part of the building height, but we're just talking strictly from a visual perspective.
Yeah, what
And
you'll
so,
see.
can you just, I know that we've gone over this, but I just want to clarify. So, if I am standing in a backyard of one of the adjoining neighbors' houses, am I seeing, I'm seeing the west, or I'm seeing the north exterior elevation?
Depends which house, but for
Okay.
most of the houses, the
The
north.
ones starting from 34 heading down Tiburon.
North. You're seeing the north elevation.
Okay, so
So that's this elevation. That's that corner we're
yes,
talking about
okay,
right
yeah,
here.
okay, and I was looking at it from the south side, so it's
Right.
pretty much the same thing. So yes, so that I just wanted to clarify that because I was having, because I knew someone was asking about that before about the grade, and I was having trouble trying to, because I knew there was something a little off there, but yes, so it will see at the one highest point, and it's only at that corner because you can see how it slopes down. It will appear to be 39 feet above grade.
Yeah, it's that corner on the north side. It actually wraps onto the west side as well.
Right.
Facing
right.
the basin.
Right, but it's really only that.
It's really that- only that
corner.
area,
It's
right.
not the whole. It's not.
Right.
It's not the whole north facade of the building. It's
Right,
just
as you get closer to 34 on that elevation, the profile of the building gets smaller and smaller.
Okay,
That's-
got it. And yeah, and I mean, and you know, to go the opposite direction, if you're looking at the other side of the building towards the classrooms, what you're really going to be seeing there is, you know, it's way less. It's going to be a lot less than 34 and a half feet. If you look at the left, you know, from the north exterior elevation.
Yeah, I'm gonna estimate, scale that about 30 feet or so.
Okay, right, so it's 30, and that's why the township uses the average grade to measure the height, because otherwise you're either getting penalized for your grade or you're being, you know, you're getting away with it. But, you know, I just wanted to just point that out, that it's only that one side, but.
So I guess just now that you've got me curious again, so can you go back to this picture here, just to put that back, and I'll kind of.
Look on the-
It's A3. Just want to ask a question then. Just to clarify again, Kate, I appreciate you explaining that, but now that's my second question here. All right, so the bottom left corner, the gym, can you point to that? Yeah. So right there is 39 feet at max, right? Now, if you slide your finger to the right, how high is that? All 39 feet back there?
This part is, yes.
That'll all be 39.
This
so
corner
the
and
houses
this part.
right below them will see 39 feet, and then a house to the directly to the left will see 39 feet as well. At the corner.
At this corner, yes,
Yeah,
and then
okay.
less here, yes.
That's important. Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
So it's
exactly
pretty
right.
smart. Okay.
Exactly right, yep.
Just have a question too. Where is that equipment that's going to be on the roofs?
So staying on exhibit A3, A3.00, where this triangle is right here, can you see that? Can you see that? Where this triangle is here, this is where the equipment yard is.
Okay, so will that raise what the height is?
No.
Not.
Like how much does the equipment?
That's why I asked to see a roof plan, but the ordinance does allow for mechanical equipment as long as it does not go, I think, 25% higher than the height in the zone. So the equipment can't be more than about 8.5 feet tall.
Okay, but if the roof is, I'm going to just use 37. If the roof is 37 and that equipment can be up to 8 feet, we're talking about 45 feet of visibility of a building
Well,
there,
and
right?
that's why I asked to see the roof plan, because we want to
Okay.
see if it's screened. He's indicated that it will be screened, and it's hard to visually see it. But a lot, you know, most buildings do have mechanicals on the roof, and when
Yes,
it's done
yeah.
properly, when it's located properly, you don't see them because it's kind of right in the middle or something like that. So we want to see the setback, things like that. So and that's one of the reasons why the town does exclude it, because it's something that can be screened if it's done properly.
Okay.
Yeah, just to add to that quickly, you know, we basically have two chunks of the building are 2 stories high, and in between those two chunks, there's a 1-story high piece.
Right. Yes.
And we're gonna we're gonna block that off and put as much equipment as we can right in that spot. So hopefully we won't even need the bonus that the town gives for equipment, because we'll be below the roof height anyway.
That's my
lower.
concern. I think the roof height is a concern to begin with, and now you're going to put equipment on top of that roof.
Yeah, and the other
The
point I
the
think,
roof height is permitted, just want to be clear.
Excuse me?
The roof height is permitted.
Oh,
They're
yeah,
they're
no,
not
but I'm
seeking a
s-
variance
no,
for that.
no.
And to further the explanation, which was perfect, if you look at sheet A300, exhibit A3 on A1.01, this is the exterior elevations again. You can actually see these screens, and if you look at these screens, we pulled them into the middle. And the reason we pulled them into the middle of the roof is so that when you're looking up at the roof, the parapet blocks your line of sight to those. So it's not like it's, 35 feet or 37 feet plus the piece right there at the edge. It's pushed way back. So for most of the area, maybe way down 34, you maybe can see the screen, but when you're up in the area, you won't really even see that screen.
That's the goal, usually.
That's the goal, yes.
I have a question. We're gonna go back in time, because I can't remember if we talked about it and why we picked that location. Can you explain why you picked that particular location for that whole complex versus, I see, that green area to the right of that, which would be further away from the neighbors? Is there a reason for that?
It would be further away from these neighbors, but not further away from those neighbors.
I mean, there's a tree line there, right? That I
Here.
see? No, that side. We're
Here.
behind the church, right behind the church,
Here.
that tree line.
Yes.
You kind of took that long and then kind of brought it down and brought it over this way.
Yeah.
Like you kind of took the whole direction and moved it right behind that tree line, like right close to the
Right.
bottom of that tree line. You would be further away from the neighbors down below and from the neighbors to the
I'm
far left.
I'm not saying to do that. I'm questioning, was that part of the consideration? And if it was or wasn't, why you did it or why not?
Okay, so I'll tell you why we did it. So when we looked at this site, we have an existing church and we have an existing parking field, pretty substantial parking field. And so we wanted to locate the building in a location that made sense to the parking field. And then our very first thought in this whole scheme was, let's use the building to block the activity. And that's why we laid it out the way we did, with this L shape facing out this way towards the parking in the church. It's easy access, and this building can buffer any activity. If kids are playing soccer, this building will buffer that sound and that activity. That was our very first decision we made.
So you're thinking that that's better for the neighbors to have the building buffer versus the building being further away from their property?
I think that the building will block that sound, so yes.
I'm just thinking I used to live in that neighborhood, so I'm very familiar with it. So I'm just trying to visualize, and we'll see that on the on-site, that if I'm one of those neighbors there, to see that big building 40 feet high, that may affect me, how I feel about it. So if it was back behind that tree line, even though you're saying it's convenient for the parking lots, the new parking lot is coming down below that tree line. So you could still access it, and, you could still access the parking lot and the building, and the soccer field could stay back up there. You said there's existing soccer field there now.
Yeah, Dimitri, if I could answer that as
I
well.
hate to redesign your whole plan, but I'm just trying to think about how to mitigate the effect on the neighbors that are there.
This was testified to at the prior hearing, and I know this is the architect.
I know.
So first of all, the aerial that's up right now, that's not the current conditions on the site. And I would recommend updating that if you're gonna do something else.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Because they got approval for a bigger parking lot a couple years ago.
So the parking lot's here, drawn
Yeah,
inside here.
he shows it drawn on there, but
Well,
that's there
what
now.
Dimitri was suggesting, because the
Well,
parking lot goes so far
so-
south. If I'm calling that south, I'm not sure which direction. Towards the bottom.
So Jason, if you let me, so what I was gonna say is that there are a lot of environmental constraints on the property.
Yeah, but what about that area?
Well, that area, you start, right, so where it's wooded, that's wetlands. Then you would have to deal with, there's a lot of steep slopes in there, and you have to deal with wetland buffers potentially, and some of this is shown on the plans. And then you start getting into a riparian buffer. The church where it is now could not be built today. It's in a 300-foot riparian buffer. That was not a Category 1 stream at the time that it was built.
Because of Willowbrook? You're talking about Willowbrook?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the whole, a lot of that, there probably is some area, but I don't think they could do what they're proposing to do in that area that's upland and developable.
So you're saying that that's the only place on that entire property that they could put that?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that there are challenges over there that you don't see, regulatory, that you don't just see from the aerial.
And-
And we'll have the engineer comes back. I'm
Yeah.
sure he'll give a much
I'll
better
point out to the engineer,
explanation.
I know he discussed it last time, but I'll make sure he emphasizes when he comes back whether there are other options or not.
Yeah, that's, I think we need to talk about, and that'll also be something we'll look at the onsite when we're there and we're walking the property.
Okay.
All right, how about board members, before I open it up to the applicant, the objector's attorney? Angela?
Do we have a clear number as to the distance with the neighbors? I think, Kate, you had mentioned page sheet 2 of Exhibit A1 as 200 feet, but that border seems to be in the middle of the neighbor's property.
That's to the, I was saying that's to the houses.
So go to the property
That's
owner.
the 200-foot line that's required for notice.
Okay, so we're 200 feet to the houses, but to their actual border, so like where those pools are out behind the houses.
Well, we're gonna bring A2 back up that was introduced last meeting.
Yeah,
That
this,
has the
this is
distances
all
it.
on the site plan. The existing farm building is about 90 feet from the closest property line, and the applicant is proposing at one point for the closest portion of the rec center is gonna be 99.7 feet from the property line.
Can you point that out?
It's right, yep, right around there, yep. So, yeah, so the other line is that, I use that as an example because I think it just coincidentally, it lines up with the 200-foot line lines up with the houses pretty well.
Okay. Any other questions from our board? Oh, go ahead, Angela.
I just want to confirm, we're going to hear more from an agricultural engineer? I do have a lot of questions on the buffer, so.
A civil engineer, yes, but
Okay.
he could, I'm sure, I don't know what you mean by agriculture, and you mean the types of planting and everything that's gonna be proposed?
Right, I think there was some mention of that there was an agriculture that had designed the buffer.
Landscape.
architect.
Yeah.
Landscape.
Okay, so
Landscape
we're gonna
engineer.
hear more about from them?
You'll hear from our civil engineer whether we have the landscape architect or not. I'm not sure. If we need to, we'll have to see.
Okay, so
think
questions
it's
about the buffer, should I ask now, or should
No, when the engineer comes back.
when that's civil, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, anybody else from the board have any questions? Okay, before we open up to the public, you're up first. Because you're gonna take the most time. And then maybe the public won't have a question when he's done.
More than clairvoyant. Thanks, sir.
I don't know, maybe they're doing something else.
Sit down.
Yeah.
Mr. Collins, good evening.
You're gonna- you're gonna have to keep
Ladies and gentlemen,
that
I'm going
mic-
to.
You're gonna have to keep the mic like 6 inches from your mouth.
I will do that. I
Because they're
will.
not gonna hear your questions.
I
back there.
got it. Yep. Eat the mic. That's what they tell you.
Got it. Now you're
Right?
cooking.
I'm in the business. I'll tell you about that later. So my name is Rob Simon. Good evening. Always good to be before this board. I'm here on behalf of various clients. Let me just rattle them off. Patricia and Joseph Bradley, 9 White Cedar Drive. Miriam and Scott Freeman, 26 Timberin Drive. Eileen and Henry Gendis, 7 White Cedar Drive. Marie and Gregory Hofstau, 28 Tiburon Drive. Excuse me, Joan and Thomas Mitchell, 24 Tiburon Drive. Pauline and Keith Raven, 22 Tiburon Drive. April and John Rutkowski, 11 White Cedar Drive. And Louisa Visconti Daly, 30 Tiburon Drive. So, Mr. Collins, good evening.
Evening.
So,
Excuse me, before you go further,
Yeah.
is that list something you can give to our attorney?
I absolutely will give it to Marty. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Collins, when were you first retained for this application?
I don't know the exact date. It was 2023, I believe we started.
And at the time you were retained for the application, was a tentative site plan already prepared, whereby you were asked to design a building based on the site plan?
My recollection is we only had a survey at the time of the property, and the church liked that side of the site, but I don't remember seeing any concept plan before I started.
Did you participate in determining the precise location of the building that's on your current architectural plans and on the current site plan?
I did.
And before you prepared your architectural renderings, elevations, floor plans, did you review the home del ordinance?
I reviewed it while I was working on the plans.
As you were working on it, did you identify that there were various variances, waivers, exceptions that would be required incident to your design?
Eventually, as design progressed, yes.
And did you do anything in terms of coming up with your final design to minimize the extent to which variance, exception, waiver, relief would be required for this application?
Well, so my testimony tonight, we have tried to, respect the fact that our building is adjacent to residential properties. And again, as my initial idea was to try to protect those from some of the noise that would naturally be generated by a building like this.
Okay, so is the answer no to my question that let me ask it a different way. Can you identify one section of the ordinance, whether in the site plan section or in the zoning section, where by virtue of your input into the design, you eliminated a variance, waiver, or exception that otherwise would be required by the applicant?
I can't, no.
Okay. And you would agree that the building that you have designed is not similar to that of surrounding buildings, correct?
Immediately surrounding, yes, I would agree.
And when you say immediately surrounding, so immediately surrounding are residential properties, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you identify how many residential properties are located within 1,000 feet of this building?
I didn't do it by distance exactly like that. We looked at aerial maps to see what was adjacent to the property, yes.
And in terms of properties adjacent to the property, those are residential properties, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And did you identify the approximate square footage of those properties surrounding the subject property?
No.
Did you identify the lot sizes of those residential properties surrounding this proposed property?
Identify, I mean visually look at them, or the exact square footage?
Did you go on to a website and determine what the lot sizes were of any of those properties surrounding this property?
No.
Did you so you told me a moment ago you did review the zoning ordinance, correct?
As we were working, we worked with the civil engineer and went through the zoning ordinances, yes.
And do you recall what the requirements are, if any, for accessory structures in a rear yard of a residential property in the R40M zone?
No.
Do you know how close a neighboring property, residential property, that abuts your property is permitted as of right to engage in accessory uses and construct accessory structures relative to the common lot line that is shared by your client's property and many of my client's properties?
No.
And in terms of construction materials, colors of buildings, did you do any type of analysis to determine what the residential buildings consist of?
Not specifically, no. We looked at, again, aerial images, street views of what was surrounding, but our goal was to make our building fit in with the church on the site.
And not necessarily fit in with the properties adjacent to the property.
That's correct.
Okay. And I noticed that while you provided some colored renderings that we'll get to momentarily. I noticed that you did not provide any colored renderings or even photos taken from your client's property looking out at ground level toward my client's properties, correct?
Correct.
And I noticed also that you didn't provide any type of photos, renderings, whether it's through imagery or whether it's through other means to show what one would see from those second floor windows from the proposed building out towards my client's properties, correct?
Correct.
I'm going to jump around a little bit because you jumped around in terms of your testimony. I don't mean disrespect on that, just in terms of the different subject matters. Generator, is there a generator proposed for this building?
We're not proposing a generator at this time, I don't believe, no.
No? So if the lights go out, if there's a power outage, and the lights go out both inside of this building and outside, where the kids are playing 7-on-7 soccer, for example, there is no generator proposed to handle that situation?
Correct. We have emergency backup, emergency lights and exit signs throughout the building and just outside the doors for emergencies.
I don't believe you touched upon it. Since you just mentioned it, I'll ask it. We talked about the sports lighting that we'll get to obviously later. In terms of other lighting, are you proposing any lighting on the building itself, whether it's security lighting, pedestrian lighting, other type of lighting?
I don't think I'm the best person to answer. There is some landscaping lighting, but that should be answered by the civil engineer.
Okay, so you as the architect on the project, you're telling me that there is no security lighting proposed on any of the facades or roofs of any of the buildings that you've designed?
I'm not telling you that. I'm telling you that I didn't design the lighting on the site. The civil engineer did.
Okay, but so did the civil engineer consult with you in terms of lighting on or adjacent to the building?
We had some discussions about some of the landscape lighting, yes. We have some low bollard lights around the plaza, and we have some other lights, for some of the bushes and things like that. That we talked about, yes.
And what is the capacity for this proposed building?
So there's the capacity that the building code allows a building like this, and there's the capacity that the church has asked us to design for. Those are two different numbers. I'm happy to give you both.
Yes.
1 second. So with the building code, we have to look at these types of buildings in many ways. And what normally happens is the numbers get really high because we're obviously designing life safety elements, and the code wants to make sure that there's proper width and egressing for stairs and things like that. So the numbers are somewhat conservative. That number for the building code alone is just shy of 3,400 people could fit in this building per the code. Now, in speaking...
Wait. When you say just shy, can you please give me the precise number, sir?
3,393.
That is the capacity of the building based on the building code.
Building code, yes.
Okay. I cut you off. Why don't you continue?
In speaking with the church, and there's going to be operations testimony, we've been told that the largest gathering, which would happen very infrequently, is 1,600 people.
And what were you told what that largest gathering of 1,600 people would consist of?
You mean what's the event?
What's the
What's
largest?
the event?
Yes.
The event would be some type of lecture, a religious lecture.
So, for this religious lecture, that would take place where?
In the gymnasium.
And the lecture would take place from the stage area?
It could take placed from the ground or from the stage. I don't know.
So,
Can I ask one question?
yeah, of course.
That's a great capacity question. At 1,600, how many parking spots are there?
I don't know. That's a civil engineering question. I don't have that. I don't know how many there are.
Just have a question. That gym could hold 1,600 people?
Yes.
Big gym.
That's with just chairs set up like at like a graduation or something like that. That's what the capacity would be, or that's what the event would be.
I'm going to follow up on those questions. So, 1,600 people, I am looking at a portion of the building that, if you exclude the locker rooms and you exclude the stage area, and you just measure the area that's comprised of the gym, which are the two, let's say the two basketball courts or the one large or the one basketball court perpendicular. What is the measurement of just that area, that rectangle, sir?
Just give me 1 minute. I
Yep.
want to try and find my glasses again.
Thank you. Yep.
Brisbane, there's another cul-de-sac here, there's a house here, house here, and house here. Originally, this was made, it was gonna be a road here, and this was made that it was gonna go into this and be developed as residential, and they never did it. The church bought it. Yeah, when Menzo owned this, that was the intent, to come through here and come through here. And they never did. Menzo, the developer, this Patillo, this developer never got a chance to buy that property.
160 feet by 109 feet.
160 by 109?
Yes.
So basically, that's 1,600 square feet,
No.
correct?
No.
No?
No.
16,000, I'm sorry.
16,000. It's got to be.
That's right, yep, got the math one off. 16,000 square feet for 1,600 people. What's the total square footage of this building?
Total square footage is 63,997 square feet.
So can we say, just rounding out to 64,000 approximately?
Yes.
So in 25% roughly of your building, you're going to be able to have the capacity for 1,600 people. That's what you're telling me.
Yes.
And what is the capacity for the cafeteria that is identified here?
We didn't calculate it that way. We didn't break it down that way. Oh, sorry, we do 102.
So that's 102. What's the capacity of the, I think there's, 9 classrooms, give or take?
Ground floor classrooms is 260. Again, these are building code numbers. The ground floor classroom is 260.
And what about the second floor?
Second floor, including the library, is 308.
And looks like you have a cafe area where you have 64 seats, right? But is that the capacity of the cafe area?
We
Or is that-
we didn't count chairs. We used the multiplier in the building code number of square feet per person.
So
We took that area, and that's how we get to the number.
So that's 102?
Yes.
Okay. And then in terms of the multi-purpose room, where it states that you're going to have 220 people. Is that the number per building code?
No, that's how it's laid out on the drawing. The number for the building code for the multipurpose room is 261.
And how was it determined to, let me ask it a different way. Was the size that you designed based on instructions from your client?
The program for the building was developed with the client, yes.
So when the program was designed by the client, did they identify to you, other than 1,600 people for the largest gathering, any other anticipated capacity for different types of events?
We arrived at the size of the gymnasium mostly by fitting the basketball courts onto the gymnasium. So that was our real goal, was to get the basketball courts and to be able to play 2 separate basketball games. So that's really how the basic size for that space was generated, and then we back-checked it from there.
Okay, so you started with the basketball courts.
Yes.
Okay. And with regard to the basketball courts, I noticed that when you have the 2 basketball courts next to each other, there's a space or distance between the 2 basketball courts. What's that distance, sir?
In between, in the middle of them?
Yes.
About 40 feet.
Did you do any type of analysis to determine what a typical distance is in spacing between 2 basketball courts that are side by side?
No.
And in terms of your determination to size these basketball courts based on what you deem to be high school regulation, did you make that decision yourself, or did somebody tell you to use those dimensions?
I believe I made that decision myself.
Okay. And what did you base that determination on?
It's the smallest standard basketball court that we typically design to. We start with high school, then we go up to college or pro if it's needed, but that's kind of our baseline.
Okay. When you say we, I'll
Me.
bite. I'll bite. Okay, you.
Me.
Okay. What other basketball courts or gymnasiums have you designed, sir?
So our firm has done St. Leo the Great, St. John Vianney's basketball court. We did 3 basketball courts in Neptune for, it was Hoop It Up at the time. I'm not sure which company it is now, but we've done several.
Mm-hmm. And each one of those, you utilize the dimension of a high school basketball court?
I couldn't say that. I think Hoop It Up is bigger, but I won't say that for sure.
And at where's Hoop It Up?
Neptune.
Right, and at Hoop It Up, is the spacing between the basketball, there were numerous basketball courts there, correct?
I believe there's 4.
4. And do you recall what the distances were between those basketball courts that you designed in Neptune?
No, it was a long time ago.
Right. And with regard to, have you ever designed one high school basketball court with the amount of excess, if you're looking at your ground floor plan horizontally with one basketball court, have you ever designed a court such as this with this much excess space surrounding the court?
In a single court configuration?
Yes.
That wasn't the determining factor for the area around that basketball court. The area around that basketball court was determined by the 2-court layout, and we needed a certain distance to be able to play basketball in the short direction, and that's what drove that.
So, with regard to, have you looked at, are you familiar with the sizes of basketball courts at other churches in the area?
No.
Do you have any idea whether any of the churches in the area or in Monmouth County have a basketball court?
I know that St. Leo the Great has a basketball court because we did it. Our
Okay.
firm did the project.
And how long ago did you do that project,
Well,
sir?
That project was at least 20 years old.
At least 20 years old.
More than that.
Okay. And do you recall what the size of the basketball court that you designed at the time?
I don't.
Okay. And was it one court or two courts?
Believe it's one court.
And with regard to the basketball court, you're also providing a spectator area or a mezzanine area, correct?
Yes.
Okay. What's the capacity for that mezzanine area, sir?
I believe we show that there's room for 300 seats there.
300. And is there any restriction that you're aware of in terms of I know we have an operations person that's going to be testifying, and I won't ask you necessarily operations questions unless it had to do with your testimony. But since we're talking about the basketball court and courts and your sizing of the basketball courts, was there any discussion about the basketball courts being used for sports other than basketball, as is typically the case?
There wasn't discussions about what other sports could be played in there, no.
Do you know whether there's a contemplation that that indoor gym, given its size, will be used for sports other than basketball, whether it's soccer, whether it's floor hockey, whether it's other types of indoor activities?
It certainly could be used for other sports.
And with regard to the size of this building, and you said it was what, 60, I'm sorry.
Roughly 64,000.
64,000 square feet. What's the size of the existing church?
I don't have that number with me, I don't think. I don't think it's on the site plan.
Do you know?
I don't know. I don't know.
It's interesting. Did you, were you familiar with the elevations and floor plans of the existing church prior to you designing this building?
Yeah, we initially met on the church site and we walked the building before we started designing this building.
Okay. So, how many classrooms are currently in the church building?
I don't have that count with me. I don't know.
Did you make any type of analysis of the number of classrooms in the existing church building before designing your site with 11 classrooms?
No, we were working off a program from the client for this new building.
And do you know whether the existing building has a library?
I don't recall being in an actual library. I was in some of the classrooms, so I don't recall a library.
Does it have a multi-purpose room in the existing church, sir?
I didn't go to the basement of the original church, but I understand that that's where there's a larger space down there. But I wasn't in that space.
Larger space, like in a multi-purpose space?
It could be, I don't know.
And are you aware whether the church has an existing kitchen in it?
I am aware that they do have a kitchen in it.
Okay. Do you know how big that kitchen is?
I don't.
How did you determine to design a kitchen space of 1,500 square feet for this space?
That That was based on my understanding of their general needs, that they wanted to basically provide snacks and things like that for the most part, some catering. So we set aside that amount of space from previous experience and equipment and things that might be needed there.
Okay. Do you know if this is going to be a working kitchen that's going to be subject to Board of Health requirements?
I believe it will be, yes.
And what the plaza appears to be quite large. How did you determine to make the plaza the size that it is?
The size of the plaza basically is what is left over between the shape of the building and the soccer field.
So as a leftover, that's how the plaza size was determined?
I mean, I wouldn't call it a leftover, but it was all considered in terms of, how people will flow from the parking into the building, and we wanted to have a nice space to travel through on your way from the parking lot into the building.
How is it determined that well, let me go back. Bad question by me. The wall, the facade wall, I guess to the north, that is facing the residence, right? What's the length of that wall?
$326 overall.
And that is the largest facade wall of the building that you designed, correct? In terms of linear length?
Well, the building's just as long on the other side. It's just as long on the south side as the north side.
But in terms of wall, isn't that wall the longest wall, if I'm just looking at it? Because the other walls are broken up, right?
Well, both sides are broken up, so I'm not really sure I understand your question. There are 3 chunks on this side, and there are 3 chunks on that side.
Okay.
They're broken up differently, but overall they're the same length.
Right. Are the chunks on the south side larger than the chunks on the north side, the way you just described it? Right?
Well,
In terms of the breakups between the wall facades?
Sure. So if you talk about the classroom wing first, the classroom wing is the same length on the south side and the north side. That's here. It's the same length on either side. And if you talk about the gymnasium is the same length on the north side as it is on the south side.
What are the breaks between those wall facades on the north side?
This is the main lobby space, the stair tower. Are the two
Right.
breaks.
So what's the length of that? Is it 10 feet?
The length of the lobby?
No, just the length of the break.
So this break is 37 feet, and the staircase, well, if I add the staircase to it, because it's all flat, it's what's 29 times 2, it's just under 60 feet.
And going back for a second here, did you also design, you kind of passed over the 20-foot high catching net. Is that something that you've seen at other houses of worship?
I haven't seen it at other houses of worship.
Have you seen a synthetic turf soccer field with sports lighting at other houses of worship?
No, but I've never been looking for one, so
Okay.
no, I haven't.
Okay. Have you ever seen 2 basketball courts at any house of worship?
No.
Have you ever seen an indoor recreation facility on church property that exceeds 30,000 square feet in size?
I can't say that for sure, but we designed St. Thomas Church in Somerset that had a full court basketball, a full commercial kitchen, 2 stories of classrooms, and that could have been larger than that, but I won't attest to that. But it was large.
Where's that located, sir?
Somerset.
And what's it called?
St. Thomas Church. It is single court, though.
Single court. And do you recall whether there was any residential homes in the immediate vicinity?
Yes, there was at least one neighbor directly next to us, and I think a couple others further back, but at least one. And there were across the street, there was several.
Okay, we'll find out about that. With regard to your testimony this evening, when you say at the beginning that you've designed many buildings like this, have you ever designed a building like this other than in Somerset at St. Thomas?
We've designed several recreation buildings. We did the Middletown ice rink. We did ice rink in Howell. So we've designed several recreation buildings.
Okay. Have you ever designed a recreation building at a church site other than St. Thomas?
St. Leo the Great,
And where's that located?
Lincroft.
And how many square feet was that?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Do you recall whether that was near residential properties?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And you show a loading area on A201. What's the purpose of the loading area?
So the loading area is so that you could bring in chairs, or you could bring in food for the cafeteria, for the kitchen. And there's a loading area for the stage if you needed to bring something in at the stage level.
So based on where your loading area is, if you're going to bring food in, someone who's going to be loading in is going to have to go onto the stage area, off the stage area, walk all the way through the gym area to get to the kitchen area, correct?
No.
Under your design? No?
There are 2 loading points. The loading point to the west is at grade, and you could dolly that straight across the gym and over. You don't have to go up onto the stage.
Mr. Simon,
Yep.
how far are you along with your list of questions?
I got a whole bunch of other questions. It's
Are
not
you
5 minutes.
halfway through, a quarter through? Give me an idea.
I'm probably halfway through.
Halfway through?
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, if you want me to stop and defer to others, and I'll come
What I
back.
would like you to do is exactly that. Stop. Let me hear from some people in the public that may want, and then I'll let you continue. But I'm going to have a hard cutoff at, I'm thinking around 9:30-ish.
It's fine.
All right?
No worries.
So at that, now, the only people that should be asking questions are the people not represented by the attorney. So if you're represented by that attorney, you can't ask a question. That's his job that you're paying for. Yes, board members, you want to ask a question?
I have a question. You mentioned 2 other recreation facilities at St. Leo and St. Thomas. St. Leo, I know, has a school, correct?
It does.
It's
We
not
didn't
just a
design.
church.
That's correct. We did not. We only designed the gym there.
Right, but I mean, it has a school with it.
It does. Yes.
How about St. Thomas in Somerset?
St. Thomas in the fellowship hall, again, we had a gym and several classrooms and a kitchen. So it wasn't a school like St. Benedict's or St. Leo's. It was, they just were similar to this. There were classrooms that were for Sunday school and lessons for the parishioners.
But it was only a church, not like St. Leo's that has a school associated with it.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Any other board questions before I open up to the public? Any professional questions before I open it up to the public?
Kate, can I ask you a question? And if I'm off, just say it. I'm off. I'm looking at your current report, the latest one you did, and you indicate there were, it looks like you're citing the applicant on page 2, and you says the applicant has indicated there are a total of 547 parking spaces.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a minimum required parking space number of parking spaces per usage or number of people going to be using the building?
So we can, it's not per using the building. So that's what's there now, and we say that because I wasn't gonna count all 537, but anyway, sorry, 540, but they're, because of the new construction, they're reducing the number of parking just very slightly by a handful of spaces. And they're proposing 539 now. And if you look on the site plan, it's in very small print, but on sheet 5, they do a breakdown where this zone, as comes up a lot, does not have standards for an indoor recreation facility. However, the Route 35 zone does, and so they provide that. I give them credit for that because most applicants don't do that. They provide that for reference. So per their calculations, based on the square footage for the seats in the house of worship and the square footage of the 64,000 square foot facility, their calculation is 454 are required and 539 are proposed. I'd also note, we give a little rundown in the beginning of my letter about the prior approvals, because remember, this parking lot's there. It was approved as part of the prior application for St. Mina, which I was not here for. So, but yes.
Right, so.
I think it's more of a question of, they
Obviously-
meet they meet the rule of the ordinance, and, I would assume that they don't want to have more people coming than they have parking for. But that's, they have a traffic engineer who's going to testify. They have, operations are testifying, but they do meet the letter of the ordinance. But again, when it comes down to the D variances, especially conditional use, one of the things you look at is, can the site accommodate this use?
Okay.
Anybody else?
Traffic engineer is gonna.
We're not going to hear that tonight. Okay, opening up to the public. I see one hand up. Come on up. You know the routine. You've done it before.
Jay Yanello, 18 Ladwood Drive. Since we're talking about parking, and I'm not a parking engineer, and I know we're going to have a traffic guy.
I'm sorry, could you spell your last name for the record?
Oh, you must not know me. Yanello, Y-A-N...
Now I'm gonna know.
Yeah, 1,700 meetings later. Y-A-N-N-E-L-L-O. But not
Thank
zoning
you.
board meetings. Again, I'm not a parking engineer, but there's a clear want to be able to have events with 1,600 people, give or take. So with 539 spots at max, that seems a little aggressive as someone designing the building, does it not?
I'm not a traffic engineer. I can't speak to that.
I think a middle school person would say that, but that's fine. We'll wait for a traffic engineer. You're saying there's no generator in the current plans. If you were given a mandate, we need a generator, where would you suggest putting a generator with this plan?
I would think the south side of the building would be the smartest place to put a generator, if there were one.
Okay.
Yeah, probably the south side. Probably the southwest corner towards the southwest would probably be, the back of the stage would probably be the best location.
Natural gas fired, theoretically, or
Probably.
Probably, okay. You said 4 or 5 times the soccer field would be for the parents, quote, parents watching the kids, etc. Are you saying, or is the church claiming, that adults won't use the field?
I'm not claiming that the adults won't use this field. I think the part of my testimony that you're referring to is why there were bleachers there, and that's...
But you specifically said the parents watching the kids 4 or 5 times. So I just found that curious.
I don't know what's curious about it. I was talking about the bleachers, and yes, to sit on the bleachers, I would think as a parent, I would want to sit on the bleachers and watch my kid play. I wasn't suggesting that parents couldn't play soccer. I was just suggesting that's why where they might sit.
The reason I'm sensitive to that, and this town is very sensitive to that, we've had many sports complexes and soccer metropolises.
Jay, that's not a question.
Okay. And it was always for the kids, but often it wasn't for the kids. So that's why I'm asking, sorry. Do you know the composition of trees on the buffer? I believe there's a lot of white pines. Is that correct?
I'm not a landscape architect, but yes, there's a lot of pine. I can see there's a lot of pines.
Okay, and I'm not a landscape architect either, but I'm hearing they're 30 plus years old, 30, 40 years old maybe.
Next question.
Okay.
I don't know.
That's not a question? Okay. I just took 20 40-year-old ones out because they're falling like crazy. So if there are a lot of white pines, I think that's quite concerning. You mentioned a lot of times, a lot of your plans were to mitigate the sound, which I just find
No, questions?
fanciful, that everything is to mitigate what's planned to go there. Yeah. Okay. Do you have a measure of the sound that would be heard, or do you have any idea the sound that would be heard from cheering inside during any sort of basketball activity?
No, I'm not an acoustic engineer. I don't. No.
Okay. Did the choice of any glass or building materials reflect any projections of sound?
Some of the materials will definitely reverberate sound off of them. The concrete panels, for sure. Sound will bounce back inward off of those for sure.
Okay. Okay. And lastly, was there any talk of music performances or concerts there in your design?
No, none. No, I made no testimony to that. No.
Okay. So there was no discussion of that as far as you're concerned.
I'm sorry.
Was there any discussion
between whom?
Between you and the applicant?
The only discussion that I've had about sound amplification and/or music is that there's definitely no sound amplification outside at the soccer field. And I understand through a conversation about their religious practices that an event like a wedding or something like that, there's no music or dancing in those events for their religious reasons. And that's all I know about it.
Okay, last question. You're saying, I think you implied, I could be wrong, when you're driving on 34, the way the design layout is, while you would see towers and some netting, you would not see the potential turf field? Is that what you're saying?
No, you certainly could see
You would see the turf field.
You could see yes.
You would see the turf field.
The turf field essentially is where the soccer field is now, and
Yeah.
you can see the soccer field. You would see, it would be partially obscured by the retaining wall for part of it, but yes, you would see the field.
Okay, I thought you said you kind of wouldn't see it, but okay. Just not a wonderful entrance seeing an artificial turf field into Homedale. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. At this time, I think we're going to end this. And Mr. Simon, we sorry for all your questions, and maybe we'll start you off at the next hearing.
Thank you.
To finish up your questions. Is there anybody in the public other than Jay? Because he's the only one that raised their hand. I don't want to cut anybody else off.
I was going to ask.
Go ahead, miss. Come on up. It's got to be a question, not a comment or...
Can I?
I'm Joanne Corella. I'm at 2 Brisbane Court.
You're not represented by the...
No, I'm not. All right. Can you put that,
This one?
yes, picture up there. All right. You testified that the reason for the design of the building here was to try to block the sound coming into this area. So I was just wondering, why did you ever consider having this part towards the front? Because the soccer field is really only going to be used during the warm weather months, so it's not year-round, where the gym is going to be used year-round, correct? So
Yes.
there's always going to be lights, there's always going to be something happening in that gym. So if this, I'm sorry, I have my back to you guys.
Yeah, but make it a
if-
question.
If this was, can this be moved up here? I know there's this little building here, but that little building really isn't something that needs to stay, if, correct?
So the way we thought about this was that the soccer field was an outdoor activity,
Right.
and that sound could travel easier on an outdoor activity than an indoor activity. And that's why we tried to wrap the building around the soccer field to
I
mitigate
understand
the
that.
sound of the outside, thinking that would be a worse condition than the inside sound.
But it seems to me that this is going to be a worse condition.
Question.
Because of where all the windows are, it seems that the windows will become more of a hindrance to the neighbors than having a field here that's only used for 4 or 5 months out of the year.
That's not a question.
Oh.
There has to be a question at the end.
You got to raise your
So,
voice at the end.
I mean, all right, so my question just is, can this be moved up to the front?
I mean,
If you had to.
anything could be done. Again, in terms of sound and in terms of light, from the soccer field. That's why we designed the building where we did and how we did, was to try to put some distance and buffer to that.
All right, so it's either lights from here or lights from that, is what your considerations were.
Question, question.
Why don't you end or begin your statement with, isn't that correct?
Oh, isn't that correct? I don't have my lawyer license. Isn't that correct? Okay.
So to answer, I think that my testimony, I explained how we purposely didn't put any windows on the gymnasium facing in this direction.
But they're just here.
There's windows here, and there are smaller windows in the classroom. That's correct, to let natural light in, and we're doing what we can to mitigate that light transmission out.
Okay, because I just know, like, as you testified, that there is going to be a men's league or for basketball, or there could be, kids leagues, and I just know from experience that that's going to be a year-round. Isn't it right that it would be a year-round facility, a year-round concern? There's always going to be lights there. Wouldn't that be correct? It would always be in use year-round, 12 months out of the year.
The gym will be in use 12 months a year, again, but through the construction type of the building and the lack of windows in that area that will be used the most, like you're saying, I agree with you, that's what we did to buffer that activity from this area.
Okay. I'm just trying to think of a consideration for these neighbors if this was up here.
So,
Miss, you have to have questions, otherwise I'm gonna stop it.
So to answer your question, if you move this up here, it's still the same distance away from these neighbors and not these neighbors. So there are neighbors all along here, and that's why we positioned the building where we did.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for all your questions. Any other resident or person out in the audience have a question? Go ahead, come on up, miss. Name and address.
I'm not good at this public speaking thing. My name is Joanne Antonino. I live on 2 Ashley Drive. One question, and I'm not being disrespectful, but how does this benefit us? How does this benefit the Homedale? How does this benefit Homedale?
Yeah, it's not an architectural question, unfortunately. I can't answer that.
So nobody could answer that question for me?
No, I just can't.
Architectural questions. That's what he testified today. But that, what you're asking at the end, you have an open comment, you can ask anything you like. I don't know if it gives the answers, but or statements.
There's also a professional planner will be testifying on behalf of the applicant. I'm the professional planner for the board, so my similar person will be testifying for the applicant. And they will recite through what the legal proofs are, which goes through things like, benefits outweighing the detriment, and there's a variety of legal standards that the board has to weigh. And so, it may not be directly, just to be honest, the standard is not directly, how does this benefit the township? But there are a variety, and she'll go through all of those, and you have the opportunity to ask questions then.
So
It's
it doesn't have to be inherently beneficial.
A house of worship is inherently beneficial, but we will go through all of that. But yes, I'm not sure when that's going to be.
Okay, any other person like to come up and ask a question? Okay, I see none. Okay, we're going to carry to, Francine, last one.
Sorry, I just want to follow up on the facility you built for, or designed for the St. Thomas. What is the scale of that facility compared to what you designed for this church? Is it
Don't hold
same
me to the
size,
number.
total?
It was several years ago. I think that building was around 55,000 square feet.
as compared to?
This building is 64,000.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so what's the next date we can carry this to?
June 4th.
June 4th, we will be carried without further notice.
First, let's make sure we can do it.
Oh, okay.
I don't think I can do June 4th.
And I guess you're gonna have to bring your architect back for that. And the engineer will be at that meeting, I hope.
If not, it would be June 18th.
That's true. I can't do June 4th. I have a meeting with,
So on June 4th, the architect can't be there. We could have a traffic engineer. Our civil engineer's not here tonight, so I'm not sure of his availability. The church representative is available, so we would have at least 2, hopefully 3 witnesses that night.
Is operations, the church
Operations, yes. So we'll try, we just won't have the architect. The o-
Yeah, but my concern is for Mr. Simon didn't finish his questions, and is that kind of jumping around?
He can handle it.
I don't know.
It's up to you. We know the architect's available June 18th, right? Yeah. Or could we have both meetings?
I would suggest to the June 4th, let Mr. Simon finish his
Well,
questions.
he can't finish because the architect won't be here. Can we do both meetings? Are you good either of those?
Yeah, I mean,
I guess we're doing June 18th.
Yeah, I'm, in full disclosure, I'm available. I mean, I have actually a board that I'm the attorney of that I'm gonna have to get coverage for. But I do echo the concerns that were raised by Ms. Keller in terms of continuity here. And I think that it would be better for the record, for the board, professionals, the public, if I was first able to finish my cross-examination of the architect before the applicant moves on to the next witness. It's up to the board.
That's fine.
Motion and second, please.
June
Yeah,
18th,
motion and second.
The board will be granted an extension through the end of June, June 30th, I guess. Do you need a letter, or is it on the records good enough? Okay.
Take the
I'll
letter.
send the letter,
Please.
and then you'll make the announcement, Marty?
We're going to have a motion to carry this to June 18th for their notice.
Without,
All in favor?
Second,
I'll second that motion.
Jason seconded.
And all in favor?
All in favor, voice vote?
Yes.
Aye.
Thank you. Adjourn the meeting, motion,
No,
second?
As long as the public knows, they're not going to get another notice.
Can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Second?
Thank you, have a good night.
Who
Thank you.
seconded?
I gotta get some allergy medicine. Travel's catching up to me.
You're all right. You're fine. You handled it like a champ. I just texted you.
Ski resort in Canada.
Dave's up there for like
Weather was, like 10 degrees.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Then I had to fly back.